Hi everyone, this is Mari, and this is video number 1 for me for Mixed Media Mania, a new series that's a collaboration between myself and Kelly, who's Froggy251 on YouTube. And Kelly and I have decided to collaborate with Mixed Media. She's going to be doing scrapbooking layouts, I believe, and I'm going to be working on my art journal. So what you see me doing on the layout right now is I'm just adhering some Tim Holtz tissue paper to the page of my journal with some matte gel medium. And I'm working in the Dilutions large format art journal. And I just want to say right now, this is too big for me to start out with. This is my very, very first journal layout, and it was really fun. I totally enjoyed it, but it was a daunting task because of the ratio of the size with this one. So I think I probably should have started out with something a little bit smaller, but anyways, it's okay. This is what I did. So I just adhered that tissue paper down. I got it all smoothed out using my bone folder, and now I'm just taking some, I think that's Rusty Hinge Distress ink, and I'm just going over it with my Tim Holtz tool, the square one. And so, in retrospect, for another time, what I would do differently with this layout is I would have gone over that tissue paper with gesso, and I would have used opaque gesso. And the reason why is because what I decided to do with this layout, and by the way, I had no clue what I was going to be doing. I decided that I didn't do the gesso, and anyways, the result is that the background is almost too dark, right? The writing in that shows up too much. But anyways, this is how it worked out. So you can decide for yourself if you were to do this what you would do, but I think I would definitely use that opaque gesso on it another time. Now I'm just going over the Rusty Hinge with some vintage photo. And I'm going to use really 3 different colors of distress ink on this layout. I'm using this is the walnut now, and so I'm using Rusty Hinge, the vintage photo, and walnut. And I really, really am going for a vintage look here with this layout, obviously. And my next layout that I'm going to try, I don't think I'll use the tissue paper. I think I'm just going to go with the mixed media paper that's in the book. So now you can see that I'm adding some not tissue paper, some texture paste with a Crafter's Workshop stencil. And I didn't add any color or anything to that texture paste. And what ends up happening here is my distress ink absorbs into the texture paste, and I've never tried this before, so I didn't realize that's what was going to happen. And that's one of the things, right, with mixed media, is getting to know your products and getting to know how they react on top of each other, because mixed media really is layering products one on top of the other. And so it's important to know, what's porous, what's not porous, what's going to move when you add something on top of it, and that kind of thing. And so what I learned when I did this layout is when you add texture paste with no color in it onto distress ink, the distress ink gets absorbed into the texture paste. So the result is that I needed to add something over top of that texture paste because it just blended in with the background. So this is kind of comedy of errors, but what I'm just showing you that paper that I'm going to use there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I ended up doing over top of those texture paste bits that I stenciled was I put some opaque gesso over top of them, and then I put some barn door red distress ink over them using that a sponge dauber. So that's all I did there. It was really easy to do that, but you're going to see that I cover it up anyways. Okay, so this layout is about Anne Frank and how inspiring she is. And there isn't an Anne Frank quote that I don't absolutely love. And I'm sure you're all absolutely the same. So the reason why I was inspired by Anne Frank recently, it might seem like a little bit of a random layout, but what happened was one of I'm actually marking mixed media presentations at school right now with my students, and one of the groups did their presentation on everyday heroes. And they used an Anne Frank quote in their presentation, and it was just really inspiring to me. And I thought, you know what, I should do a layout using one of her quotes as inspiration. So the plaid patterned paper, which is basic gray paper from like a million years ago, it's in my stash. I think the date on it is 2009 or something. That it was perfect because Anne Frank's diary supposedly was a red plaid. And so that worked out perfectly. So now I just took a picture of her off the internet, and now I'm just distressing it. I don't want to just, obviously I don't want to go over her face with that distress ink. So I'm just trying to make the picture look like it's old, like it's aged. And you'll see me working on that using a variety of different distress inks and techniques as the layout progresses. So yeah, I just am trying to create some different looks there with that picture. So now I'm just taking some of my gelatos and I'm just adding a little bit of pink ink to her cheeks so that she's just has a little bit of color to her there. And she's definitely going to be the her face is definitely going to be highlighted because I don't put anything over top of it. And I wanted her face to really kind of pop up off the layout, obviously, because she's very much the focal point of the layout. So I've been adding some Heidi Swap Color Shine splatters on there as well. And I'm just, drying up all those different bits that I've been adding on there. And I tried to make that look like a book, like her diary. And I'm just going to use some foam tape now to pop that up off the layout and give it a little bit of dimension. So definitely using a lot of the same ideas in scrapbooking with this art journal, and just trying to make it a little more artsy, I suppose, than perhaps some of the scrapbook layouts might be. I don't know. Anyway, so I wrote diary and kitty on the spine of that book because she often wrote in her diary, "Dear Kitty," whom some people believe was a friend of hers. Some people say that she was referring to her diary as Kitty. It's up to your thoughts and what you think she might have been meaning by that. So what I then did was I put some distress ink. Now I put some distress ink over top of that texture paste on the left and right side, because I didn't like the way that it looked. So I took my bronze my bronze distress paint, and I went over it with that. And I really like the way that turned out. It's really bright and shiny, and it adds obviously some shine to the layout instead of it being so dull and dark. So then I just took my Stampin' Up! Punch and I just punched those that I just did that one punch on the one end to make it look like a notebook. And this has an Anne Frank quote on it. And I just love this quote. It's really awesome. And I'm just distressing that. And you're going to see me add some water to it and crumple it and so on. And that paper doesn't have, I just printed that on my computer. It does not have any primer on it at all. So that distress ink is not going to move. Once you put it on there, like you could see me rubbing it, it's not going to move around on there because I didn't put any gesso or any gel or anything on there. So it's there to stay. So I just put some water on that just so that it was easy to crumple. And now I'm just drying it up so that it actually feels like and looks like a really aged piece of paper. And so now you can see on my layout, I'm starting to try to sort of configure where things are going to go and how things are going to come together. I decided to use that bronze distress paint in the corner as well, obviously, to make it look like the other areas that I have the texture paste, because it seemed like that little corner was pretty empty and I wasn't really sure what else I was going to do with it. So I just added that texture paste and that distress paint on there again. So I do the same thing with the picture to distress it. I put some water on it and it just makes it easier to take chunks out of it and rough it up a little bit. I don't crumple it right up like I did the other one, but just to distress it a little bit and make it look aged, like it's a photo that was found and discovered and saved, which is ironic. Such a sad story. I don't know if you've actually had a chance to read the Diary of Anne Frank, or the Diary of a Young Anne Frank, the Diary of a Young Girl. I'll get it right sooner or later. Anyways, it's a fantastic book, and if you've never ever had a chance to read that book, I highly recommend that you put it on your summer reading list, because it is such a good book. It's so inspiring. It's devastatingly sad, but you know what story that you read about the Holocaust isn't, right? Obviously, it's just one of those tragedies in history that's just, it's so sad. And this is probably one of the saddest stories for sure. And I mean, obviously not that there's a sadness scale. They're all sad stories, but I mean, this is just certainly one that resonates with people. And it's so cool that they were able to find her diary and publish her story. So this is just a little bit of hopefully an inspirational layout that that inspires people, reading that quote and that. So I just took some bits and pieces from Tim Holtz vintage pack. It's one of those packs that you can get with all those little vintage pieces in it. And I used the bird because one of the few things that Anne could see out of the one window in the attic was were the birds. And she could also see the famous tree that, it's not too long ago now that tree was, I guess it fell over, it split because it was, it had rotted from the inside kind of things. But I just thought that was kind of neat that picture of that bird was in there. And she writes in her diary lots about what she sees out the window. And that's, I mean, obviously she's very extremely limited as to what she could see. So, and there's a butterfly there, which obviously has lots of symbolism, and just some other little bits and pieces that are distressed. Now I'm just taking those, I believe they're Tim Holtz stamps in kind of a distressed lettering, and I'm just printing out their Inspire. And I'm just taking each one of the stamps, each one of the letters, and stamping them individually just to make sure that the little stamps don't fall off my block and only 4 stamps stay on and whatever. Anyways, I stamped them one at a time just to make it easier. So I used archival ink, black archival ink for that, just to make sure that it was not going to go anywhere once it was on there. So I'm just taking just a black marker, and I'm just going to go over the edges of those letters just to make sure that they're really defined. So this is a perfect example of why I really think I should have gone over that background with gesso, because it's hard to see things like that on that tissue paper, having not done that. So now I'm just taking a white gel pen and I'm just going around some spots on those letters just to make them pop off the page and just to kind of add a little bit of a highlight to them. So what I did was I took a piece of that same plaid paper and I just made sort of like a little mini diary out of it, and I distressed it with some distress ink, and I just put Anne Frank's name on it in black. And now I'm taking a little, one of those little Tim Holtz, you can get those little metal pieces in the packs, and this is just a little lock so that it looks like the lock on the diary. And I'm just gluing that on there. And now I'm just going to distress the edges, because this is, like I said, obviously this is a really vintage look. One of the things I said to Kelly was, well, it's super dark. But I guess, like she said, it does, it goes with obviously the vintage appeal to the layout. And it's really hard to kind of appreciate it even on the video, but you guys probably find that too. When you're making layouts and that, they never look as good in pictures and stuff as they do when, you're looking at them in person. And this is one of those ones that it's easier to appreciate, I suppose, in person than on the video. But so having done this for my first time, I definitely learned a few things about some of the products, and I definitely feel like I want to buy Moleskin, I think they're called, and I've been watching lots of Vicky Papuano's videos, and definitely have been extremely inspired by her art journal videos. She's just the master at it. I'm amazed by what she does. But I wouldn't mind getting one of those smaller versions. And then what I'm going to do with my next video is I'm going to do just kind of something brighter and something that lends itself to a larger, kind of a larger palette, right? So I'm just taking some color shine. I'm just going to spice it up a little bit with, me and my Heidi Swap color shine. If you follow me at all, I use it on just about everything. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me, and I hope that you were inspired and learned some things about art journaling. Bye.